How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and as you can see, we're back at it, breaking down all the latest news and rumblings in Mets land. And folks, we have ourselves a jam-packed discussion to kickstart our week, that being Monday, November 10th, of the time this video first dropping, and it's headlined by Tatsuya Imai. In case you guys do not know who Tatsuya Imai is, you will know everything that there is to know about Imai by the time you've concluded this video, and ultimately why the New York Mets are heavily coveting the Japanese right-hander to land with them for the 2026 season and beyond. And I understand this may be hard for some of you guys to comprehend, but believe it or not, the LA Dodgers are in fact not going to land every player coming over from the MPB this offseason. I'm going to expand as to why that is, where the Mets stand, why this man is so coveted, why is he the best pitcher coming from Japan since Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and to a lesser degree Kodai Senga, and a whole lot more. From there, we're going to break down what is happening with the Mets and their latest acquisitions as they brought in on a smaller level, that being José Rojas. So we'll break down Rojas' game and what is his expected role heading into 2026 spring training. And of course, to wrap up the show, we're going to summarize some other key reporting that has come out over the past couple hours, discussing the New York Mets as one of, if not the most aggressive team heading into this year's free agent and trade market. Why exactly is that? What are the players that the Mets will likely find themselves seeking outside of an Alonso reunion and Edwin Diaz, to say the least? That and a whole lot more is what we're going to get into right here, right now. So all I ask is that you guys hit that like and subscribe button on your way in. That's just a fantastic way to support the platform. Help us get to 36,000 subscribers. We're just a couple hundred subs away, and we're giving away a jersey to one lucky subscriber on the platform once we hit that latest milestone goal. So thank you guys for the continued support there, as well as your comments down below there. I want to hear from you guys, your initial gut reaction and analysis of the following topics that we have today. And as always, shout out to our amazing sponsors that make every single show here happen at SeatGeek, that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs, everybody. SeatGeek has over 70,000 active events to choose from, making them the #1 rated ticketing app in the game today for a reason. And all you gotta do, everybody, is check out their app, as you guys can see beside me, because it's so easy to navigate. I've been using it for years before they were even a sponsor here, because one, their grading scale 1 to 10 and their color coordination scale red to green is what makes it so easy. You look for a ticket in the 7 through 10 range and the green, a great bang for your buck. If you find a ticket in the red range, more 1 through 4, it's not a good bang for your buck, and you probably shouldn't get it. They're fair and honest, which is what I love about SeatGeek, everybody, and I'm set to use them big time this weekend, because not only will I be attending the massive card of the year for UFC at Madison Square Garden this upcoming Saturday, but before I get to MSG there for the big game, I'm also, not game, but rather the fights, I'm in fact going to be attending a very exciting baseball game at Citi Field that many of you guys will too, and I hope to see you guys there, and that's thanks to my great friends at SeatGeek for the hookup there. But folks, you guys see it, the showdown at Citi Field, Puerto Rico versus Dominican Republic, 1 p.m. Eastern this Saturday, the 15th. I will be there in attendance, and I'll also be hanging out, probably pre-gaming a little bit, the tailgate. I know my guys at Queens Baseball and X, if you know, you know. Make sure to check them out. They're going to be having a lot of fun doing their own little parking lot tailgate in a Lot F from 10:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. They didn't ask me to relay the message, but I'm going to, because I intend on being there to hang out with them for a bit before we actually go into the game together. I'll either be rocking my Team Puerto Rico Francisco Lindor jersey, or just my Lindor jersey, likely in general, or Soto. One of those three. Either way, look out for your short schmuck, which is me, everybody. And check out our great friends at SeatGeek to have you covered for tickets when it comes to this exciting event at Citi Field, among many other sporting events. You name it, everybody. Check my link down below in the description and use my promo code WARDY10, because you're going to get 10% off your next ticket purchase. And thank you guys so much for doing exactly that. Now, folks, I cannot wait for this weekend, just like each and every one of you. I've been longing to attend one of these games, or whether it's just been the Dominican Winter League in general, or what we have here in Team PR versus Team DR, which is going to feature both active and former MLB players. You see on the graphic there, we see Mets legend Robbie Cano. We got El Mago on there, another Mets legend, among others. Cue the sarcasm, but I'm excited to see all of them. I hope to see you guys there. But all right, guys, enough of me yapping about things separate from the topics itself. Let's get into what we got to break down today, because not only do we have to get into Tatsuya Imai, José Rojas, the Mets being most aggressive, but tonight, everybody, around 9:30 p.m. Eastern, barring changes at the time this video first dropping, we will also be live on the platform. And if you're wondering, Wardy, why are we going to be live tonight? We're going to be live because it is the start of GM meetings, as you guys can see beside me. So we're going to be breaking down all you need to know in this year's GM meetings, any potential rumblings from the free agent and trade front, because we have seen trades happen in previous years at these meetings separate from the winter meetings that officially take place in December there this year in Orlando, which I'm excited about separately. But the GM meetings that'll be happening for the next couple days, we're going to break down any key remark from David Stern should he share them, as well as what is happening in Mets land at this point on the news and rumor front, separate from the following topics. So make sure 9:30 p.m. Eastern, barring changes, live here on the platform. Now, everybody, let's start here with Tatsuya Imai. I'm excited about this one. In case you guys couldn't tell by now, I'm excited what I think is for rightful reason, because I completely understand every Mets fan, their mother, not being in love with the idea of bringing in a Japanese player, because while Kodai Senga brought us great success in 2023, we haven't gotten all that much from him since then, because he's struggled mightily to stay healthy. He has been unbelievably inconsistent, and on top of it all, the LA Dodgers since that time have dominated the Japanese market thanks to lending the unicorn himself and Shohei Ohtani, which is why if you go on X, as soon as they talk about any Japanese player, everyone is led to believe that they're going to land with the Dodgers barring changes. And I'm here to tell you that, believe it or not every player that's being posted this year will in fact land with the Dodgers, because one, the Dodgers don't have roster room for them all, and two, there will be guys that will be seeking roles outside of the Dodgers organization because it'll be better for them and their actual development and potentially their careers. And Tatsuya Imai is a fascinating arm that is getting set now to hit the market, as it's been officially stated, everybody. But let me just relay to each and every one of you, in case you guys did not see yet, just to make sure that we all understand each other. As you guys can see here, the Lions there, the MPB, are officially posting Tatsuya Imai, and he'll be joining his teammate there, and Kona Takahashi, both exciting right-handers, but Tatsuya is highly coveted, and there's good reason for this. And this is one of these guys that maybe you didn't know too much about up until now, and that's okay, because let Uncle Wardy help figure it out for each and every one of you, what you need to know here on Tatsuya. And it starts here with the following. Look at the numbers down below. Oh my goodness gracious, do we have ourselves something cooking here. And 24 starts the season, 163 innings. Tatsuya has posted a sub-2 ERA, a sub-.9 whip at just over 2 FIP, and 178 strikeouts, good for just under 10K per 9 at 2.47 walks per 9. The home run rate, only 0.3 home run per 9. Was there not to love immediately with Imai? Now, I completely understand Mets fans are naturally deterred from a Japanese pitcher because you think, oh my God, is he going to be meticulous and care about every little detail like Kodai Senga? Well, yes, to a degree, that is how Japanese players work. They operate very differently than what we see in the States. However, as we've seen with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, as we have seen when healthy, Kodai Senga and others, when right, these guys can absolutely be dominant for you. And everything that I've seen relayed to this point about Tatsuya Imai, who is looking like he's going to be getting a payday of at least $100 million this offseason, he is more in the category of a Kodai Senga than he is necessarily a Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Not in the sense of, oh my God, the guy's completely pales in comparison with talent, but rather in what their value is going to be in this year's upcoming market. And what I noticed right away about Tatsuya Imai is not just a fastball that's its mid-90s that touched 100 miles per hour for the first time in his career this year, which is very exciting. It's not just the nasty splitty, the tight slider, the sinker that he's now brought in the arsenal this year to really throw off more lefty batters especially. It's not just the curve. It's not everything that's great about his arsenal, as it is that paired with his age. He's only 27 years of age, and he's entering his age 27-28 season. He'll turn 28 in May, if I'm not mistaken. This is peak prime time for David Stearns and the New York Mets, who are reportedly in the market for one, if not two, major starters this offseason that could be ace caliber or at worst mid-level rotation guys for you to pair with Noah McLean. So by connecting the dots, who's someone who fits potentially both the short and long-term bill for this Mets team in their rotation? Who is someone that is justifiably a guy who's going to be getting anywhere from a 3 to 5+ year contract coming out of the Nippon Pro Baseball League and will be deserving of it? Well, look no further than Tatsuya Imai here. He checks off the short and long-term bill, which is so important for David Stearns. We know Stearns how he operates, and he may be very different this offseason now that he's going to be more aggressive after Cohen is breathing down his neck a little bit after what was such a failed 2025 year. But knowing that Tatsuya here has had great success that we've seen over the years in the MPB, but he's someone who is still very much in the peak prime of his career. He's yet to fully peak yet. Kodai Senga had already peaked for the most part when the Mets were signing him, as he was already around the age of 30 after spending right around a decade's worth of experience in the MPB for Japan. That's why the Mets have clauses in their contract with Kodai Senga which state that if he loses extended period of time due to Tommy John surgery, that they can get out of the contract to a degree after a certain amount of years. And that's also in hand as to why the Mets were able to sign Senga to a fairly team-friendly deal at the time of it happening, when many believe that he was going to get maybe a greater bag elsewhere. It wasn't just Billy Epler doing great with his negotiating. If you guys don't know, Billy Epler, when he was the Mets GM a couple years ago, negotiated the contract and the signing of Senga, and this is the same man who also actually signed and helped negotiate Shohei Ohtani when he was the active GM for the Angels when Ohtani came to the States around 2017-2018 range. So the Mets don't have Epler, but they do have David Stearns. And David Stearns did not only scout Munetaka Murakami that we saw back in mid-August of this year when he went over there to check out the teams in Japan and Korea, but he was also heavily scouting Tatsuya Imai, among others as well. And Imai, you guys see it right there. What I love so much about this profile right away is that, one, he's not going to be as costly as a Yoshinobu Yamamoto at $325 million. Now, is Yamamoto worth every penny at this point for the Dodgers? Absolutely, no doubt about it. And he was entering his age 25 season when he was signed, which is why he was also so coveted on a long-term deal. Tatsuma's a couple years older, doesn't have necessarily that full breakout season to the same degree as one Yoshinobu Yamamoto, or even going back to Kodai Senga's 2019 season there, where he really burst on the scene there in the MPB, and that's what made him more coveted and get to the major league level. Imai, however, has stayed relatively consistent, as you guys see from the stats there. And what we have seen is a guy that can come in to a 3 to 5 year contract at very respectable AAV and check off a lot of the boxes that the Mets are currently trying to check off. Pair that with the fact that should the Mets decide not to trade Kodai Senga, and there's a real world where they still don't, they value Kodai Senga at all, Senga is going to inevitably be a helping hand in landing Tatsuma as not only a fellow countryman, but it give the perfect relay to Imai if they have any discussions per se on how the Mets operate with Japanese pitchers, because Senga's alone on an island. He has been that way since the Mets signed him entering the 2023 season, so he knows exactly kind of the pros and cons that come with being the organization at this point, where he himself has been at fault as a player versus where maybe the Mets have been at fault, if at all, with how they went about operating with him. And I think it's been more on Senga than anything, because we know how meticulous he is, and if things aren't a specific way, there's a problem. But Imai, in the 2024 season, 25 starts, had right around the same numbers on the K per 9. He had a full walk higher in the walks per 9. He's actually averaged just over 4 walks per 9 throughout his career. But what we have noticed is that each of the past 3 seasons, I mean, not even 3 seasons, each of the past 5 seasons, he's gotten better and better with his walk rate. If we look all the way back to 2021, he had a 5.6 walks per 9. 2022, shortened due to injury, we saw a 5.1 walks per 9. 2023, 4.1 walks per 9. 2024, 3.6 walks per 9. 2025, 2.4 walks per 9. So Imai is showing you in real time every single year his improvement at the MPB level. But what stayed true each of the past 5 years for the most part has been an ERA sitting right around 2.3 or so. So he's shown you his ability to stay rather dominant at the MPB level, was the best Japanese pitcher in all the MPB that we saw over this past calendar year. You could rightfully argue has the stuff, has the velo that again is touching 100 for the first time in his career, and he's only 27. So the idea of Imai coming into the fold for the New York Mets in this lab, pairing with Senga, who can hopefully, God willing, stay healthy, maybe have a little bit of rejuvenation, knowing that he's going to have a fellow countryman paired along with him if they bring in Imai, can only bode well to be a great thing. Now, when I mentioned Kodai Senga earlier as a comp to Imai, I can understand if that deters fans to say, hey, I don't love the idea of Imai, because if he's going to be like Kodai Senga, where Buddy gets hurt and we never see him again, then I want nothing to do with him. And I completely understand that. But I'm here to tell you that Imai, one, has a lot less mileage on his elbow entering this free agency versus what Kodai Senga was a couple years ago. That's an important factor, very important factor to evaluate him. And two, Imai is already, in many ways, had what's looked like a greater potential ceiling that we may see at the major league level than what Kodai Senga was looking like when the Mets initially signed him. Senga was a big deal when the Mets signed him, and he still is a big deal if he can get his head out of his you-know-what with staying healthy and looking right. The ghost fork is ridiculously good. It's one of the best, if not the best swing-to-miss pitch in baseball when it is right. But that's been a problem for Senga, and his inability to stay healthy the past 2 years has not helped the Mets at all in their continued pursuit, I'm sure, of fellow Japanese talents. Now, we cannot lump Senga as a certainty with Imai, as is the case with many other pitchers. And I do firmly believe that whoever has the luxury of signing Imai is going to be getting a really, really good cost-efficient pitcher for given how this market's going to be. This is an arm that absolutely looks like he's going to be able to thrive greater at the major league level than what we've seen with a year and a half's worth of sample size of Shota Imanaga being good. I say year and a half because Imanaga was great his first year, separating aside any potential ailments, but he has not really been the same pitcher since. And that's why Imanaga was opted out of his contract by the Cubs when he still had only 3 years of $50+ million. Really good AAV, but if the Cubs don't want to spend that, as stubborn as they are, there's rightful reason for it. From everything that I've seen reported to this point on Imai, who's officially getting set to be posted, and once that begins, he'll have a 45-day window to negotiate with teams. You're going to see everybody and their mother, for the most part, in his market because of how affordable he's going to be and because of his upside. This is a man who looks like at his absolute worst is a 4 in your rotation and at best is your ace. And that's exciting because that absolutely checks off every single box what the Mets currently need right now. I also love the idea of the Mets bringing in, say, Tatsuya Imai on a 3 to 5 year contract where at absolute worst, he's entering his age 32 season by the time that contract is over if you go a full 5 years, where Kodai Sengi already signed him, he was like 30, 31. These are different circumstances. These are apples and oranges here. And that youth that is Imai, not even being at the age of 30 yet, is really going to help not only his marketability, but how much David Stearns and Steve Cohen will be going after him. Because you will not see, for any reason whatsoever, David Stearns giving out a long-term contract to any starter this offseason unless it's truly someone worthwhile, and they're only really worthwhile in the trade market, cough, cough, Tarek Skubal. When you look at the current free agents and the Dylan Ceases and the Framber Valdezes and the Zach Gallens, among many others that we see in the free agent market currently, none of them are really justifiably, or none of them justify, rather, to give a 7-year contract to. But on more the short and mid-term end, there's a lot of guys that check off the boxes. And Imai is not going to have a qualifying offer attached to him the way that all those other starters I just relayed to you, for the most part, already have attached to them. So instead of having to give up a draft pick and maybe giving up higher AV and a longer-term contract than what you want in Stearns, you can just go all in on Imai and pair him with one other quality starter this offseason at minimum. And that other quality starter should be someone via trade, in my opinion, like a Skubal. Like I said, that's the pipe dream. Or a Joe Ryan from the Twins, a healthy Pablo Lopez coming back from injury, a Sandy Alcantara or Edward Cabrera from the Marlins if they're willing to trade in the division the way that they were so willing to do so a year ago with Jesus Luzardo of the Phillies. You know, hopefully they still have that mentality, Peter Bendix, a calendar year later. Point stands. There is talent out there, but there aren't many that check off an abundance of boxes the way that Imai currently does. The only rightful counter we have with Imai is, okay, the Mets rotation is filled with uncertainty. Why are we going to go ahead and sign another guy on a $100+ million contract who hasn't even towed the rubber once in the States? And my counter is because we know how good they are. Just because they're not necessarily going to look the exact same at the major league level does not mean that they will not have success. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was a unicorn in his free agency year as a pitcher in the sense of a 25-year-old who had so much to give already and was going to look like an ace as soon as he got to the major league level. That's all held true. And I'm not saying that Imai is going to have that exact same impact, but he's fully expected to have the impact of like a Shota Imanaga's first year, if not greater. And his ability to give you length, to go deep into ball games, to give you north of 200 innings every single season, and he still has a lot more to prove in his respective career. Pair that with what the Mets are now doing in their pitching lab as they parted ways with Jeremy Hefner there, but who they brought in, I'm very excited about too, and Justin Willard, who has yet to be officially announced, but it is inevitably happening from the Red Sox organization. This is more the movement that's going to bode well for this organization. So, all I have to say at this point in regards to Tatsuya Imai is do not be surprised when you continue to find the Mets in that conversation with him as these weeks go on, and once he inevitably gets officially posted, has the 45-day window, and everyone and their mother is going to be yapping saying, I want Tatsuya Imai. But you will know from here, your guy Wardy, everything that there is to know about the coveted right-hander. So guys, you let me know if you're for or against Tatsuya in the comments down below. And if I'm being completely honest, the only thing that I don't like about Tatsuya is just because of the fact that Kodai Senga's been a problem the past 2 years, and I do not love the idea of bringing in someone who may be similarly minded on how they handle themselves injury-wise. But the reason why I'm not going to lose sleep over it is because it would be wrong for me to lump one Japanese player as an example to another. That just feels wrong for more ways than one. And pair that with the fact that we have seen so many other Japanese pitchers and talents thrive at the major league level continued outside of Yamamoto and outside of Shota Imanaga. I mean, we have seen this story so many times. We would go back to the peak times of Masahiro Tanaka with the Yankees love Imai. and they're already deemed by certain rival reporting as the favorites to land him. Now, I'm not really putting much stock in that right now, because if it comes down to dollars, if it comes down to desire of a location, if it comes down to swaying and really doing everything in your power to get the red carpet out there, Steve Cohen's going to do it. And I firmly believe that Steve Cohen will be willing to pony up the dough more than any other ownership group for Imai, for example, should this move happen. But you have to bear in mind, the Yankees are the Yankees. They swung and missed big time in the MPB market the past couple years. They thought they had Yamamoto in the bag, and those schmucks came in third place behind the Dodgers and the Mets to land him. So you never know when it comes to these markets. But Masahiro Tanaka, when we look at Kenta Maeda, when we look at just so many of the star talent, not star, but like really good above average Japanese right-handers or lefties that we have seen come over the States over the past 10 to 15 years, there has been plenty of guys that have had continued success. I firmly believe Imai will continue to fall in that category. So now, everybody, going from Tatsuma, let's continue our conversation and let's get into what else is happening in Metsland. Because what is also happening in Metsland is a move the New York Mets made as of just over the past couple hours of the time of this video first dropping. And in case you guys do not know him, let me tell you now, he was most recently in the Yankees organization last year. So staying on the Yankee train unintentionally, we're here to break down José Rojas, the 32-year-old batter who the Mets have brought in. Now, let me start by saying, José Rojas, what did he do last year? Oh, he casually had more home runs than anyone else in the International League this past year. Really, really good stuff. So Rojas, 32 bombs, 105 RBIs, a 287 average, a 379 on base, a 599 slug for the AAA affiliate for the New York Yankees this past season. Buddy has slugged at the AAA level for a lot of his career, and he's looked really, really good in doing so. But the reason as to why someone like him especially is being signed by the New York Mets is one simple factor more than anything else, in case you guys are unaware, and that is more depth. Depth. Rojas honestly gives me a lot of Nick Plummer vibes in the sense of a guy that has clear power at his bat. Not necessarily a failed prospect, but a guy who's never really panned out at the major league level. Continue. That's why his major league numbers are very small. Only 83 games. He has 6 home runs, 16 RBIs. He has less than ideal WRC plus and his limited playing time, including his at bats with the Angels that you guys can see here from the past year or so. The point here and why the Mets brought in Rojas is again that AAA depth. It's that kind of quality power bat that you can have in AAA. If you need him in a pinch because of injuries or because you just want to give him a short opportunity, like what the Mets did with Jared Young last year, he would fall in that category because of his power propelling him. That power is legit. It's been there, but he has not transitioned to the major league level. And it's hard to envision a 32-year-old now finding his game at the major league level in 2026, especially for a Mets team that obviously doesn't need it. So this was a minor league contract that the Mets signed through and through. This is a man that will likely be starting the year in AAA Syracuse for the Mets affiliate, but he, of course, will be doing his best to try to ball out in spring training, make a name for himself, and see if there's somehow, some way, a world where he could crack this Mets bench to begin the year. I do not anticipate it to happen, but, of course, I'm going to give benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. He has right around a half a season sample size of major league reps that we have seen in those 83 games, and at the AAA level, we know what he has done. It's more so what hasn't he done at that level. But José Rojas, a minor league signing for the New York Mets to come in to be added to AAA as he can play both the infield and the outfield for you. Probably not going to do either of those things overly proficient, just so you could tell by his frame and what his strength is, which is clearly a power first bat. But nonetheless, always happy to see guys added to the organization. And I know you may lose sleep over this. I won't, because this is nothing more than a minor league signing. Believe it or not, everybody, David Stearns is going to land guys that will be depth moves in the minor leagues at the major league level, and then quality moves at the major league level. There are tiers that Stearns will be going through this offseason, as he does every single year, just like every other team's GM and Pobo. This is no different, so do not believe it as anything otherwise. But there are fans out there that are firmly led to believe that because we do, like, say, our first 10 transactions of smaller level moves, that all these guys will be on the team next year, and that's just not how this works. Like, the Mets are legit going to be signing guys that don't even make it to spring training because they're cut and off the 40-man before they're even considered. Like, he's not on the active roster right now. It's a minor league contract, but the point I'm trying to make is that you will see some other moves, say for the bullpen among others, and you're like, oh my God, how's this guy on the 40-man right now? And that's because the Mets don't have a bullpen right now. They don't have like anyone under contract at the moment for the most part, outside of AJ Minter, Huascar Brosman, and Brooks Raley. They got nothing at the moment. Dickie Lovelady, who they put on a major league contract, but he's a prime example of someone who may very well not even be there by the time we get to spring training, because the Mets are going to have placeholder options on the low end of depth, but they, of course, are going to be going after bigger names and bigger talents in the free agent and or trade market. So that's what you got at José Rojas, everybody. You can let me know your initial reactions and thoughts about him in the comments down below. But now going on from Rojas, who will be looking to bolster that power front for the AAA Mets there in Syracuse. Let's go on from talking about him to getting into the final reporting that we have to get into today, because it's not just on Tatsuya Imai, who I really enjoyed breaking down. One of the first of many conversations I'm sure we're going to have of him on the platform in the coming weeks. Beyond him, however, we did see some other reporting that I'd like to share with each and every one of you. And this comes from Bob Nightingale of USA Today, friend of the platform. We actually had Bob here for an exclusive interview right before the MLB trade deadline. He had a lot of really good scoops that we saw, and some of them actually came to fruition by the deadline, which was really cool. But Bob states today, 10 biggest MLB hot stove questions from top free agents to latest trade rumors as GM meetings begin in Vegas. And what he stated regarding the New York Mets was 2 to 3-fold. And let's start with a really interesting one. So, Major League Baseball lost a lot of money this past year. Now, I'm not surprised to see that a lot of teams find themselves operating in the negative. But in particular, supposedly, according to Nightingale, the New York Mets headlined the millions to billions of dollars total loss by Major League Baseball this past year, with the New York Mets at a loss of $350 million. Now, no one should be surprised by this, because I'm sure this is factually correct. The Mets have been operating at a loss, especially. And this is, of course, not necessarily taking into account every statistic from like the earnings at Citi Field to others, just talking about operations in general. The Mets were working at a loss of $350 million. Now, that's a large number. That may seem like a big deal. And that's not something that Steve Cohen wants to continue to do every single year. But thankfully, and I say this truly as a thankful Mets fan, because while we have not had a lot of winning under Steve Cohen, we know has not been for a lack of effort on his end by any stretch of the imagination. Steve is the reason why we care every single year, maybe a bit more than what we were doing under the Will Ponzian regime. But the point stands. Steve Cohen has a net worth of over $22 billion. And while he doesn't have all those dollars right in front of him, because it's a net worth for a reason, he is able to bite the bullet and operate at a loss like that comfortably without really batting an eye heading into 2026. Where this becomes a greater issue is if the Mets go, say, the next 5 to 10 years of operating at a similar loss, if not greater, then that's where we have more of that conversation. Just because while it may not hurt Steve's direct pockets, it may hurt the actual function of the operation for the Mets itself. So that is something I want to relay from this piece. Pair that with Bob Nightingale breaking down who is expected to be the most aggressive teams in this year's free agent market. And who did he have right at the top of the list with the LA Dodgers? It's, yes, you guessed it, the New York Mets. And no one should be surprised by this. What? You mean to tell me you just found out the New York Mets are going to be aggressive this offseason? Again, I understand a lot of fans are not in love with David Stearns right now. I understand a lot of fans really do not like the idea of David Stearns operating ship after what went wrong this past year. I also understand that regardless of how you feel, the Mets are going into this offseason scorched earth for a couple reasons. And it's not just because of the fact that you have a lockout inevitably happening next offseason, which means that teams may never be able to properly operate or spend again for a period of time. If a salary cap and or floors at all put in place, it'll completely hinder the initial abilities of Steve Cohen and what made him separate himself from other owners, and that's by flexing his financial strength, rather. Should that happen, the Mets are going to have an issue, which is why it's imperative to make sure you're making big moves again this offseason. Cough, cough, Alonso especially, who we have a lot to say about in tonight's live stream. A lot to say about Alonso, and more negative than positive for the fans who want Alonso to return. I'll leave it there for now. We got a lot more coming there. Separately, the Mets are going to be the biggest suitor because they just saw the Dodgers win back-to-back championships. The Dodgers are the biggest hurdle in the Mets' way once they get themselves figured out. Once they have the roster figured out, once they get a run going like what we saw in 2024, not 2025, the Dodgers will be right there waiting for them. And when that time comes, the Mets need to be ready. And while they might not be able to be ready with everything of their current on-field product, they can position themselves to be in a greater position by, again, doing everything in their power to add to strength this offseason, right? Look at this team. Look at the roster configuration. Look at the free agents and trade talent out there. There are so many guys out there that can fit the mold of this team for both short and long term in more ways than one. And the Mets are going to be uber aggressive because you have a Steve Cohen that's pissed off, hasn't won a World Series in his first 5 years, has only had one true deep playoff run in his first 5 years as owners because nothing happened in 2022 against the Padres. That was just a horrendous 3-game stretch at Citi Field that, of course, yours truly had to attend for the first game because why wouldn't I be there? Shout out Max Scherzer for being an absolute bum then, as he still is now. Just not when the Blue Jays need him, of course, in the World Series, because God forbid the Mets got that type of clutchness from a younger Max Scherzer 3.5 years ago, however long it was now. I'm being better. Point is, what I'm trying to make, the Mets are going to be a top suitor this offseason. And they are not only wary of the Dodgers continuing to be the big bad Dodgers, building the dynasty that they're building, but they're also very wary that they have a time frame to work with Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Brandon Nimmo at minimum. And you cannot waste these prime years, because as soon as you do that, then it changes everything about this organization, how you operate and how you build it moving forward. So for all those reasons and then some, the Mets are going to be one of, if not the most aggressive teams this offseason. Steve Cohen's pissed off. David Stearns, for his first time as Mets president, actually has a level of pressure on him from the owner this time because of how everything went wrong this past year. And to those who suggest that, oh, Cohen loves David, he would do nothing to do wrong by him, you know what Cohen's going to love more than anything else? It's winning. And Steve doesn't really know what that's like at a prolonged level at the major league level. You really don't think that David will be finding himself with a new job in the next calendar year and a half, if the Mets have another failed season? I got a bridge to sell you if you think otherwise. This is a big market. I like Stearns a lot. I think there's a lot of proper qualities with him, but he also missed the mark on a lot. And this is a big learning experience for him, as it is for the fan base, on how can we give David Stearns the keys to allow us to trust him again. And that's for him to go out and do things this offseason that he has not done in years prior. And that's to not work by the margins. That's to actually go all in on what we're trying to build for 2026 and beyond. And I do anticipate the Mets will be doing that with their heavy aggressiveness for starters in particular. Because Nightingale did also state in this piece that the Mets, he fully anticipates, are expected to be going after one, if not multiple, ace caliber starters, which goes in hand to a degree with what the initial rumblings were up to the trade deadline, until we found out that everyone was asking for a King's ransom at the deadline. And unless your name was Merrill Kelly, you were not a starter of quality that was traded at this past year's deadline. And Kelly doesn't even like New York, reportedly, from what we've seen. And it's not like he did anything for a Ranger team that didn't go anywhere for Texas in 2025. So outside that, the Mets were not alone as a contending team looking to add starting talent that was not able to land starting talent because of how costly they were via trade. How much have those costs changed for the greater or for the worse this offseason? That's what we're going to likely find out in the coming days, everybody. Because you know how we talked about how there's, some moves, but not a crazy amount of moves that happen in GM meetings? Well, there are still moves that happen. And there's absolutely a role where we may see some traction of signings and trades beginning as soon as later on tonight, heading into tomorrow. And that includes the following, everybody. Let's just take a look at this. This is from Mark Feinstein of MLB, the article that I'm currently nitpicking yet, and that's Paul DePodesta, who used to work under Sandy Alderson, didn't do much then, has been recently the chief officer basically for the Browns, and is now the Pobo for the Rockies. Shout out Rockies for continuing to get nothing right. But beyond that, we do see down here, I want to go down to trade season. Here we go. Although transactions are rare at GM meetings, they're not unheard of. The Rangers acquired and I remember this like it was yesterday, Jake Odorizzi from the Braves during the 2022 meetings. Odorizzi hasn't been to Major League Baseball since, it feels like. While the Rays dealt for Mike Zunino, shout out Zunino, big bopper of a catcher in 2018. Craig Kimbrell, Adderalt Simmons, I haven't seen in a while, that name. Aaron Hicks and Jeremy Hellickson were all traded during the meetings in 2015, one of the busier weeks that we've seen. Also, free agency, we have seen things happen at the free agent level as well. And while, again, free agency can be fickle and can change, it's not impossible for these things to happen, right? So, although free agency officially began late last week, the GM meetings are typically where clubs and agents begin to lay out the groundwork for this winter's deals, as well as early negotiations. So, again, bringing back to the whole point as to why we're doing a live stream later on this evening at the time this video dropping, is because, one, there may be transactions that already happen as soon as tonight, and two, I think we're going to get a little bit of a greater idea as to how the Mets are going to plan to operate this offseason beyond what we know publicly at this point, and I've assumed at this point that we have covered over the past calendar month and a half. We finally have won through the gauntlet, which was a really, really rough October of no Mets baseball while the playoffs are going on and trying to figure out topics and things to discuss. But now we're going to circle back on a lot of those topics and expand on a lot of them and get into a lot of new ones now that the offseason is officially upon us and the free agent frenzy, technically, we're going to call it how it is starting tonight. So again, everybody, I implore you, if you have not checked it out already, make sure you have your notifications on. We'll be live right around 9:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, barring changes, going over everything in Mets land. And not only will I be answering your questions, comments, and concerns regarding the following topics that we have down below for you guys if you want me to answer your specific questions, because I absolutely love to do that, but we're also going to get into more on Alonso, on where the Mets stand there. And like I said, it's not great at the moment. Edwin Diaz, where things stand with his current contract dispute, as well as the other external targets the Mets may have interest in, any rumblings, should David Stearns give us any key quotes or remarks today, we obviously will be breaking them down in its entirety. That and so much more in Mets land with each and every one of you in an interactive live stream, as we always do every single offseason. We'll be doing tonight around 9:30 p.m. Eastern. It'll be the first of multiple live streams we do this week, everybody. So you know how we did live streams every single day all season long for our post-game coverage? Well, buckle up, because the offseason, the time has come, and we're right around at the point where you're going to get close to daily live streams from yours truly for the foreseeable future, along with our pre-recorded video content like this. So again, everybody, I would like to thank you all so much for hitting that like and subscribe on your way in and on your way out. Let me know your initial reactions, thoughts, and analysis in the comments down below, especially to Tatsuya Imai, on what you guys, that you guys would like to say in regards to him in the comments down below. José Rojas, the Mets being the most aggressive, and anything else that we covered in this one. Thank you guys again. I'll see you all later. And until next time, as always, no matter what, folks, let's go Mets. Peace out.